Hello, everybody. This is the Chocolate News Podcast. This week's podcast is sponsored by Cincinnati Public Schools. I'm your co host, John Alexander Reese. And if you didn't know, the Cincinnati Herald has been around since 1955 and is the leading African American owned newspaper in the greater Cincinnati area and northern Kentucky area. And today we have with us our digital correspondent, Andrea Carter. How's it going, Andrea?
It's fine. I'm relaxing and on vacation a little bit, but I'm doing well. Doing very happy. Very pleased to be here today.
That's good. I'm glad to have you. And we have our special guest, politician and businessman, Christopher Smitherman. How's it going, Mr. Smitherman?
It's going really well. Thank you both for having me on.
It's a pleasure to have you on. Now, before we jump into today's main topic, we have some chocolate news. So, Andrea, what's the chocolate news of the week?
Well, the chocolate news of the week. This has been the 4th of July. I would say we had tragedy over the 4th of July holiday, which is unfortunate. We had a little happy and then a little tragedy. So I shouldn't say little, but I'm going to end with the happy and I'm going to start off with the tragedy. First off, there has been some protests in Akron, Ohio. I think everyone has heard about the DoorDash driver who was shot 60 times in what has some deemed a hail of bullets in a traffic stop. There's been some controversy over what happened regarding how the young man got stopped. Then there was a shot fired, and then he stopped, he fled, and the police fired on him. But what ended up happening is 8 police officers are suspended due to the investigation. There were 90 bullets fired, 60 hit him, and people still trying to figure out what happened. Supposedly, he fired a gun from his car, and there's a flash or a muzzling sound of a gunfire in the video that has been released so far by the police. But it's still unsure. There was a ring and a gun found in the backseat of his car. Again, they don't know for sure if that was the gun that was used to fire at the police officers. I'm not going to point fingers at anybody. I'm just waiting for the investigation to come out. It's unfortunate that another Black man has died at the hands of police officers. Some people are saying that this is excessive force and no one should die by 60 bullets. We've seen this over and over again, and it's just unfortunate that this occurred right before the holidays. On the other hand, on Sunday, the Highland Park, which is a suburb of Chicago, a 22-year-old young man decided to climb a ladder of a building and fire into the parade. And he ended up killing 7 people. The 30 people have been injured, and he has now confessed to the crime, allegedly that he might have been planning a second shooting from what he confessed to the police so far. But it's an unfortunate situation of where he is known to have some mental issues going on. He has threatened his family in the past, but it's unfortunate that he decided to fire into a parade where people were gathered. It was a fun day. It was an exciting day for people to enjoy, wave their flags. The kids can enjoy, run around, see people that they know, and it's turned a tragic event. So it's unfortunate that we're dealing with tragedy right at the 4th of July holiday. And then the final piece of chocolate news that we've had today is Katani Brown Jackson was sworn in as the newest justice to the Supreme Court. And that happened on last Thursday when Justice Stephen Breyer decided to retire. So a little good, a little sad, and that is the chocolate news for today.
Thank you, Andrea. And now we're moving on to our main topic of the show. And I want to reintroduce politician and businessman, Christopher Smitherman. So how's it going, Mr. Smitherman?
I'm doing well, John. Thank you so much for having me on. And Andrea, thank you so much for being here and having me on. You know, the news pieces that you put forward. You know, one of the things that came to my mind is I participate in parades frequently with my kids over what I think is a long career. And I can tell you that, you know, the things have changed. The public is more aggressive at times. when I'm at public events, and it can be very, very scary. And so I participated in a 4th of July parade, and you get home, you turn on the news, and you see what was happening, in the Chicago proper, a gunman shooting 6 people, and I know one other person passed away today. So a total of 7 people, but very, very, very scary. I am a Second Amendment person, meaning I'm a concealed carry, a licensed concealed carry. And it's unfortunate that we have to look at this world that we're in, what we call soft targets. I was the chair of law and public safety for an extended period of time for the city. I was the chair of law and public safety when we had the incident at Fountain Square, where we had a gunman come into the heart of the city, enter the Fifth Third building. And if it were not for the heroic actions of our Cincinnati police officers, more people would have lost their lives in Fifth Third and on Fountain Square. And we have been very proactive in the city of trying to make places like Fountain Square safer for citizens who come and visit. Hearing that story and thinking about those families and thinking about those children in the mass shooting where 20 children lost their lives in a school, as we move into our fall and kids are going back to school, I just think we have to be vigilant. I'm a big supporter of resource officers in our Cincinnati public schools. And there's a lot of debate around that. I think there's no better time to have those resource officers getting to know kids, but making places that look soft look harder for people to enter and hurt our babies. I'll stop there. But that really struck me because I had just participated in a parade here locally when that happened.
I mean, parades are such a scene of happy. Everyone's dancing around and waving, and having walked in a couple of parades myself, I mean, you see the joy, the exuberance, the families gathered on porches and along the curbs. Just, it's a happy day. It's a happy time. And to see that tragedy occur in Highland Park, it's kind of like it makes everyone stop and think about, do we still want to do this? Do we, how much of our landscape has changed with regarding gun rights, the gun violence? And as a gun owner, especially as a Black person, what would you tell someone who's contemplating, should they arm themselves and protect themselves or not? What would you tell a Black person? Because in this day and age.
Well, I've been a concealed carry, and my late wife, Pamela Smitherman, and matter of fact, she was a better shot than I was, quite honestly. And she would often tease me about that. But responsible gun owners all across the country, like myself, it's not what the public has to worry about. It's the guns in the hands of bad people, like we saw what happened this weekend. My family is from the South. Father, Birmingham, Alabama. His father was a Baptist minister. My grandfather's church was burned to the ground after he had advocated for a filling station to be African American. My mother's father, that was Reverend Otis Smitherman. That's on my father's side. My mother's father, James Flowers, was a farmer and teacher in Montgomery, Alabama, Spriggs, Montgomery. He was a farmer, and I spent 10 consecutive summers with him. I was very rarely, if ever, in Cincinnati as a kid. I left, school ended, I went to Montgomery, Alabama. It's where I learned how to farm, hunt, fish. And so when you go to the South, and so many African Americans in our country have roots in the South, and we know our history of what happened in the South, the way we treat guns, respect guns and gun owners is really different sometimes than how people view them in the North. But what I will say to you is that I think that more people who are listening to this should consider going through extensive training, learning how to use a firearm, learn how to use a variety of firearms. It's something that I want for my daughter. I don't want my daughter to be in a struggle in her life and a firearm hit the floor in a struggle, meaning someone is trying to harm her, and she doesn't know how to take off the safety on that firearm and protect her life. It's like for me, it's as basic as making sure your child knows how to swim, meaning lots of youth still and adults in this country don't know how to swim. And you could find yourself on a dock of a lake collapsing. You could find yourself on a boat somewhere with a life jacket, and you need to know some basic skills. And that's how I look at firearms, as a basic skill to know how to use it in a safe way, lots of hours of training, no matter what the laws are in your state. Training is critical. I don't know if I can't say much more. I could go all night just talking about it, but
No, I think that's good, because I was going to ask you about training, because with Ohio's law, now you can get a gun, but you don't have to get a permit. You don't have to have training to have the gun. I'm glad to hear that you're insisting on people getting trained.
Oh, training is everything. I mean, I can't. I mean, I have 5 beautiful children. I can't name a time that my wife and I did not have something in our home. And we had a home invasion, by the way, since I've lived in my home. Very scary home invasion. We weren't here, luckily, but my wife walked in on the invasion in our home. What I will share with you is that the training is critical, because what you want is your natural skills to kick in, so that, the goal is not to take somebody's life. The goal is to retreat. That's what my wife did. When she found somebody in our home, she retreated. She didn't move forward to further engage the conflict over property. Now, if they had pursued her, the outcome would have been different. And so part of training, I think, is knowing when to use your firearm, knowing when to retreat, and making sure that if you're having to use your firearm, that you're doing it with certainty, because it is it's a huge responsibility for anyone to pull a weapon on another person. And I've been out with people, for your listening audience, small game hunting with people who do not know how to use a firearm, basic etiquette of not pointing a firearm at someone, how you carry it. Someone who's listening to this is like, absolutely. And you can tell within 30 seconds, somebody who doesn't know what they're doing and they need training. And I don't hunt with people who don't know what they're doing. And so I can't emphasize enough. My position is a lot of training for anybody who would like to carry a firearm in the state of Ohio.
Well, I know that I don't want to just concentrate on guns, but I would say, as an advocate for public safety, what has been going on in Cincinnati, and even in the county, there have been shooting incidents and things like that. What should we be doing, or what should we be concentrating on to make our streets safer from this erupting gun violence that seems to be more and more targeted?
My sense is that we still have, unfortunately, a culture of, it's called the no snitch, quote, no snitch, end quote. And that really undermines the public safety, of a community, where you could have so many witnesses, like at a Juneteenth event this year, and have gunfire erupt and not have anyone share what they saw. So one is a lot of education within our community about the importance of sharing information, and all of us being responsible for doing that, so that people understand that when they pull a firearm in our community, that we're going to cooperate with law enforcement. Obviously, homes and what is happening, behind the door of our welcome mats is critical, and things are very, very different. So really an emphasis on home structure. I'm a big advocate. Anytime you talk about social services in our county, it should never, ever, the public policy should never force a man out of a home. So, I think we have to be much more certain about keeping families together, not having any economic policies that drive family members apart for economic reasons. And family structure is critical, and having men involved in these young men's lives is just critical. This is not throwing money. Money will not solve some of the things that we're dealing with in our county. It's going to take mentorship. It's going to take our churches. It's going to take our community leadership, like the Urban League, like the NAACP, as just two examples. I'm not calling them out. Like, I'm just using them as two examples. There are many organizations that could and should and are doing now. But we need more programs putting bodies on our babies and making sure that they have the right leadership in their life.
Well, let's talk about economic policies, especially in Hamilton County. You've had a career of helping to run and shape the city of Cincinnati. What do you hope to accomplish if you are elected Hamilton County Commissioner?
So some of the big issues, it's like, sometimes when we talk about public policies, I'll give you an example, issues related to the decriminalization of marijuana, which is something I worked very hard on when I was a member of city council. That legislation started in 2004 and wasn't passed until last year or the year before. So it took a long time to get there, and I got there because I'm a stockbroker and I saw what was happening with cannabis and publicly traded companies making billions of dollars on the open market. But we still were creating a permanent underclass by giving tickets and misdemeanors to predominantly African Americans in Cincinnati, which would not allow people to get jobs after being caught with small amounts of marijuana. And so there's this huge disconnect where, even though the FDIC is not receiving cannabis dollars, that's going to change. We saw medicinal marijuana and we saw the legalization of marijuana rapidly going across the country. But we saw cities like Cincinnati, still giving out, many misdemeanors for small amounts of marijuana. It's not a sexy issue, but it's one of those issues that touches so many people. You'll see me at the county level looking at issues like that. So looking at jobs and family services and seeing how I can support our new director Michael Patton, in his work with jobs and family services. There are issues like the Bengals Stadium, huge. And that is going to be a significant deal. Whoever is elected, the next county commissioner, is going to have to be right in the throes of negotiating a deal with the Bengals. So that impacts everybody's taxes. And as we've seen inflation going up, the three of us right now, anytime we're filling up our tank with gas, fuel, we feel that. Well, when we get to summer, we're going to feel that. The Bengals Stadium is one of those things that we pay for. It impacts our life because we have to pay money that cost us and takes money out of our homes and impacts our cost of living, our standard of living. So that's going to be a big one. MSD is huge. We've had that 50-year agreement that we continue to kick down the road, the 50-year agreement between the city and the county. So that impacts all of us in the county. Who wants sewage, literally sewage, backing up in people's basements? And I know when you worked at City Hall, you had to deal with the strong rains that we just went through. The calls that would happen the next day with people that said that they have sewage, whether they live in Bond Hill, whether they're living out in Mount Washington, whether they're living in Anderson, whether they're living in Coleraine. Communities are being impacted by sewage backups across our county. Not a sexy issue, but really, really important. And it has teeth and so important for us to get our arms around.
I mean, you personally, that one 2016, that one big rain that MSD got backed up and there was flooding across the city. I know you were personally affected. I think your office was flooded. My house got flooded. I mean, I think that was the best reality of what needed to be done regarding the MSD sewer system, not just the sewer, but where the water runoff, because there's so much water that's impacting a number of homes around the city now. And MSD, they have not expanded the drainage system. It needs to be improved, needs to be enlarged, and there's that back and forth. What do you think it's going to take to fix the situation between the city and the county and move that situation forward so everyone sees some reprieve and having less problems with drainage around the city and around the county?
Well, at the heart of the 50-year agreement, so I'll talk about it in two phases, is all of the employees that are participating, and I know you know this, that are participating in the Cincinnati retirement system. So the discussion, the city of Cincinnati is the only city in the state of Ohio that has its own pension that the city manages. And, if that pension goes under, it is dramatic for every taxpayer in the city of Cincinnati because we are responsible for meeting that financial obligation to those over 4,000 employees that are retired and those that are continuing to retire every month from the city. And so if we take those MSD workers and we pull them out of the CRS system and we say, you no longer are contributing to that system, just like Social Security, it crumbles the Cincinnati retirement system. And so a discussion from the county level to say, we're just going to pull every employee out of the CRS system is just not possible. And so having worked for the city and then hopefully being able to serve at the county, I'll be able to negotiate the interest, understanding what the city's interest is, and now what the county's interest is. And so the way we solve that is we put a schedule on those who are participating in the plan, and we put them on a schedule of slowly moving them out of the system and then not putting new people in the system so they would begin to participate, let's say, in PERS. But it might take us 30 years to unwind this. It's not like we're going to pull everybody out of the system because you want to give the city of Cincinnati an opportunity. Our contribution to that plan is 16.25. And the last time I looked at that, the city's plan, it was like 1.4 or 1.2 billion dollars that we have in that plan. And as you see this market dropping, it only puts more stress on it, on the pension. So this discussion of pulling everybody out and saying you're just not participating is just not going to work. Fixing the issue of our sewer system is going to require money. And the county, meaning all of us as county citizens, are going to have to get that price tag on what is it going to cost us to fix our sewers. And ultimately, the sprawling that you're having is impacting the suburbs are larger now, and it's not complicated. The sewer system that was built hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years ago can't handle the waste and the runoff, because once you cut down enough trees and you take out enough roots, it has created a runoff in our county and parts of our city that are just dramatic, and our system just can't handle it. So we're going to have to continue to invest in that in our sewer system, and it's going to cost money to do it. And I want to say the last thing is, when I got flooded out, and I don't know about you, Andria, but when I got flooded out, I felt very much alone because it doesn't impact everybody. I might get flooded out, but my neighbor didn't get flooded out. And I lost everything in my basement of my private financial planning practice. And it was tough. Mentally, it was tough. The cleanup was tough. It was very expensive. And I don't think the county properly reimbursed me for the impact of that flooding. So we have to get more serious about making families whole when their basements are flooded and they lose everything, and that we have the proper teams in place that are not gouging the citizen when they're going in for the cleanup, but that we're reimbursing for that cleanup and the loss that those citizens have. I think that is incredibly important. And you'll hear me talking a lot about that as a county commissioner, having the money to make citizens whole.
I would say also it's about education about what to do when this occurs, because I remember when that flooding occurred, and I was in Office Depot when it still existed in Cincinnati. And there was a woman, I was in one aisle, and there was a woman in another aisle, and I heard her talking. And I literally went around to her and I said, "You're not alone. Well, here, you need this information. There's this meeting and you need to go to this." And she ended up going, but she didn't know anything about it. And she just broke down in the middle of an aisle. And I found that in the various areas that it occurred, some areas were addressed more than others. And the information was getting out, and then disinformation was getting out as well. So there's some education that needs to be done better for that regarding MSD and drainage and overland flooding and all that type stuff. So I would say one final question would be, as you're running for county commissioner, what are you hearing from the residents? What are people telling you? I'm seeing your signs everywhere. So I know you're getting around. But what are people telling them? What are their concerns regarding the county that need addressing?
Well, A constant theme is safety. I mean, you started the show talking about safety. And so safety tends to be top of mind, and top of mind no matter the race, no matter the gender, and no matter the neighborhood. So safety is something people are very, very concerned about. People are talking about the stadium deal. They don't want to be saddled with another bad stadium deal. And so there's a lot of discussion, and I've continued to commit that whatever we negotiate, we will bring back and allow voters to vote on it. So no dollars without a vote. I think that is incredibly important, that 3 county commissioners not make a decision about whether we refurbish a stadium for $500 million. And I'm not suggesting to anyone who's listening to this that I'm suggesting a pathway. That was a number that was floated by the Bengals, or building a brand new stadium for over $1 billion. And I'm not suggesting that that's the pathway. All of these things are being floated, but at the end of the day, voters should say yes or no. So that's the second issue that I hear people talking a lot about. Taxes are huge. People talk about their property taxes. They feel with inflation and with where taxes are, that their checks, their monthly income is lower than their expenses. So it's a hot topic right now. As you talk around, people are taxed out and they're feeling very, very stressed, and they want relief. They don't want a person that's going to say, we're going to go in and raise your taxes, which is not something that I'm going to do. You know, it's interesting that people are really talking about civility. So there's some people that, as you know, having served at City Hall, that they watch and they're in the know, they're in the circle. And there have been some county commissioner meetings that haven't been our best moments. And so people are raising that as, you know, the civility. Lots of questions around ethics and around corruption. And so we have an elected official that I served with whose trial was wrapped up and given to a jury today. And so people are talking about, you know, ethics, corruption, and making sure that anyone who is elected will operate with the highest standards. So those are some themes that I am hearing from citizens as I go around. And thank you for saying that you're seeing my yard signs popping up all over the county.
Oh yeah, I mean, every single time I'm driving someplace, I'm like, okay, Chris has been here. I'm seeing the Smitherman sign, the blue signs, and I'm like, you have been working for a while on your campaign. I've seen you've just been a very steady drumbeat. Each place there's a new spot for I see a sign and things like that. I'm like, okay, you're just working your way across the county, and it's very interesting to see where your signs pop up. So I wish you luck. Thank you for coming on the podcast, and I know we will have you back again. And good luck in November.
I appreciate it. I want to just end by sharing a little fact as we go. There's never been an African-American man elected county commissioner in the history of the county. So if I'm elected 232 years, there's never been an African-American man serve as a county commissioner. So if not now, then when? Our African-American boys, our African-American men need to see men in leadership. It's important. And it's not the reason to vote for someone. But what I will share with you is that the time is now. The time is now that our children can turn on the TV in my lifetime and put this one thing to rest. That we're not going to take another step as we talk about what does justice look like? What does fairness look like? And that's why those fresh eyes on jobs and family services. I believe in social net services, but I don't want policies that push men out of their homes and break them up from their families and their children. And so me advocating with the state on policies that make sense and having those voices and having that voice there, I think is critical. So I just want to emphasize that to your listening audience. This is a critical race. It's historic. I'm running as an independent. People tend to classify me as conservative because I love family. I don't believe people should walk around with their pants hanging down off of their behinds. You know, I'm strong when I talk about the decriminalization of marijuana, but I also support the LGBTQ plus community. I don't fit in any particular bucket. But here I am, a candidate running for county commissioner with an opportunity to make history of electing the first African-American man in 232 years to the Hamilton County Commission.
one final question. Do you think it's going to be harder running as an independent, or is it easier running as an independent?
It's harder because I don't have a camp. And so it's really citizens deciding that they're going to vote for the best person. There are three people running. And so it's that feeling of, I'm voting for the best person. And so, I probably won't be on a sample ballot. And so people have to find me and think about me. And that's why we've been working so early. The parties will catch up really fast, as you know, and those sample ballots are really powerful. And people tend to just get the sample ballot, vote the sample ballot, not do that homework of who's running. And that's very dangerous for my campaign as an independent. So it's harder. The freedom of it is that I can come on a broadcast like this and say, I'm a Second Amendment person. I'm African American. I'm a small business owner. I support LGBTQ plus issues. I believe in reforms within our police departments that starts with training being the central part of it. I believe in social net services, very, very important. Federally qualified health centers are critical, and we have to make sure that we're providing health care for our citizens in Hamilton County. But when you do wrong, when you take the life of someone, my libertarian views really kick in and say, I want to hold you absolutely accountable when you pick a gun up and take the life of one of our citizens, whoever that is. The accountability has to be great. It has to be certain. And it has to be fast, it has to be swift, so that people understand you just cannot kill our citizens and get away with it. I'll be long-winded, but I appreciate you all allowing me to just flow and share my thoughts with you.
No, thank you for coming on, and we look forward to having you again.
Andria, thank you so much for having me on. I'm most appreciative, and I hope that anybody listening here subscribes to the Cincinnati Herald. My plug for the Herald, that you go to the Cincinnati Herald website and make sure you stay up to date with what's happening. Not just, it's an African-American newspaper, but it's news. And so we hope that people subscribe to the Herald, that they advertise in the Herald. So just don't say, you're a candidate out there running and you're seeking the support of African-Americans, and then you're not advertising in the Cincinnati Herald, or you're not making yourself accessible to give interviews like this to the Cincinnati Herald. So that's my plug for you all. Continue to do your great work.
Well, thanks for the plug. Now I feel that we should do a plug for you, because as I was saying, during the recent podcast, due to recent events, I told people that people just need to start getting involved with local politics, because, it's your future. So if people want to get involved with your campaign, how can people help with your campaign?
They can call us at 513-242-8683. And it's another way is 513-242-VOTE. They can go to our website, www.Smitherman for County Commissioner. And getting involved is coming by and getting a yard sign and being proud about it and putting it in your yard now. Coming and making phone calls, honking waves, and really sharing the information with your friends and family, because I'm not running under the banner of a party. And so word of mouth, still in the African-American community, we're still an oral community, very proud of that. All of us are proud of it. And so sharing that you support me is really important within your family, and letting your elders know. It's very interesting. When I go out and I knock on the door and one of our elders opens, they know me. And I feel really good about that. So, but sharing this in your churches, at festivals that support Christopher Smitherman, and what you're going to get is an honest politician that cares about people. I'm not going to always break in the way that people say, hey, Smitherman, you've got to go this way. I'm not wired like that. But what I can tell you is I'm dignified. I want to treat my colleagues, which would be Commissioner Alicia Reese, Commissioner Driehaus, with the utmost respect when we're having debates. So, but getting involved is just calling that number, going to our website, making a contribution, getting a yard sign. That's how you can help.
All right. Well, that's it for today's show. Once again, thank you for coming on, Mr. Smitherman.
Thank you.
We will. And I just want to say thank you for Andria for coming on and discussing all the chocolate news. And remember, folks, you can find more information about today's topics and past podcast episodes at www.thecincinnatiherald.com, the SESH newsletter, or on our social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And make sure to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast app. Our podcast is on Apple, Spotify, TuneIn Radio, Amazon, YouTube, and Google Podcasts. I'm John Alexander Reese, and have a good day.